I've been working at the local council's valuation office of assessments for over 3 decades now. It's not the most exciting job in the world, but it pays the bills and I've got some interesting stories to tell. Our office is responsible for determining which tax band properties should be in. The higher the band, the more tax you pay to fund things like schools, trash collection, and emergency services. Now, in our quiet little town, we've got this one woman who's made it her life's mission to report everyone and everything. Let's just call her Karen. This lady is the ultimate nosy neighbor, always peeking through her curtains and calling every authority she can think of to tattle on her neighbors. Karen's been a thorn in our side for years. She calls our office constantly, reporting her neighbors for the most ridiculous things. One time, she reported a guy for tax evasion because he bought a used car. Another time, she accused a family of truancy because their kid was home recovering from surgery. It's madness. Everyone in our department dreads dealing with Karen. She's rude, entitled, and just plain unpleasant. The worst part is we're required to follow up on every single one of her reports, no matter how absurd they seem. It's frustrating because we know she's just a mean old lady, but policy is policy. One day, I had the misfortune of answering her call. I could practically hear her smug grin through the phone as she started ranting. Karen demanded that I reevaluate the house at number 61, claiming the owners had added a new bedroom, kitchen extension, and shed without reporting it. She insisted that if she had to pay her taxes, so should they. I sighed internally, knowing I'd have to send out a letter to the poor folks at number 61. A few days later, I got a call back from the homeowner. He was clearly annoyed, but he remained polite throughout our conversation. He explained that he had checked with our office before doing any work and was told it wasn't significant enough to report. He even mentioned having a note confirming this. I checked our records, and sure enough, there was a note on his account. I apologized for the inconvenience and explained that we had to follow up on all reports. He understood, and we arranged for an inspector to come out just to tick all the boxes. The day of the inspection arrived, and I could just imagine Karen gleefully watching from behind her curtains. But here's where it gets good. The inspector discovered that this guy's house had been on the wrong tax band for over a decade. He should have been paying much less all this time. When the report landed on my desk, I couldn't stop laughing. I was thrilled to call the homeowner and give him the good news. I informed him that his property had been in the wrong tax band for years and that he was due a significant rebate for overpaying his council tax. The homeowner was ecstatic. He shared his plans to use some of the money to throw a big thank you party in his garden, inviting all the neighbors except for Karen. I thought it was a brilliant idea but warned him to be careful not to antagonize her directly to avoid any legal trouble. He agreed and mentioned he was considering getting banners made. Initially, he wanted them to say, "Screw you, Karen," but after my warning, he decided on "Thanks for the money, Karen" instead. He figured that would get the message across without crossing any lines. A few weeks later, I heard that the party was a huge success. The entire neighborhood showed up enjoying a lavish barbecue and drinks, all courtesy of Karen's meddling. The "Thanks for the money, Karen" banners were apparently a big hit. I could just picture Karen seething behind her curtains, knowing that her attempt to get her neighbor in trouble had backfired. She'd inadvertently put money in his pocket and united the entire neighborhood against her. Though Karen continued reporting her neighbors for every little thing. I guess some people just never learn. Dealing with my mother was like walking on eggshells in a minefield. She had borderline personality disorder, which made her unpredictable and often abusive. As a high-paid lawyer, she loved flaunting her superiority over others, especially her own family. Her favorite pastime, making me feel guilty about everything, including money, even though she had stolen $30,000 from my dad that was meant for my college fund. Our relationship was always rocky, but things came to a head when I was 18. I confronted her about her abusive behavior, hoping we could work things out. Instead, she went nuclear. While I was away, she stole $10,000 worth of furniture from our house, which my grandparents owned, not her, and even took my beloved dog. She left behind our other dog who was diabetic to fend for itself. It was a last straw. After that incident, I cut ties with her completely. It wasn't easy, but it was necessary for my mental health. Fast forward 4 years, and I was finally starting to feel like I had my life together. I had a decent job, my own apartment, and was even thinking about going back to school. Then came the day I ran into her at Sam's Club. I needed to pick up a few groceries, and there she was making a scene at the gas pump. Some things never change, I thought to myself. I tried to duck away unnoticed, but she spotted me. My mother yelled at me to come and help her. I reluctantly approached, keeping my distance. When I asked what the problem was, she explained that she couldn't find her membership card and needed gas, but they wouldn't let her get any without it. She was frantically rummaging through her oversized purse. I watched as she became more and more agitated. She complained about how ridiculous the situation was, insisting that she knew she had the card somewhere and suggesting that they must have deactivated it. I asked if she had checked all the pockets in her wallet. She snapped back, claiming she had already done so and wasn't an idiot. Her voice was rising and people were starting to stare. I could feel the familiar embarrassment creeping up my neck. She declared that she was going to talk to the manager, insisting that they couldn't treat her like this because she was a loyal customer. Before I could stop her, she stormed off towards the store entrance. I followed, knowing this wasn't going to end well. Inside, she marched straight up to the customer service desk, cutting in front of a line of waiting customers. She demanded to speak to the manager immediately. The poor clerk behind the counter looked startled. The clerk offered to help, asking what the problem was. My mother accused the company of doing something to her membership card, claiming she couldn't find it anywhere and needed gas. She demanded a new one right away, with all her points intact. The clerk apologized and explained that if she had lost her card, she'd need to apply for a replacement, which usually takes a few days to process. My mother became even more agitated, declaring that a few days was unacceptable. She asked if they knew who she was, insisting that as a paying customer, she deserved better treatment. Her voice was echoing through the store now. Other customers were whispering and pointing. I wanted to disappear into the floor. I tried to calm her down, suggesting we go home and look for the card there, but she refused, insisting she wouldn't leave until they fixed the situation. She turned back to the clerk, who was looking increasingly uncomfortable. My mother threatened to have the entire store shut down, boasting about being a lawyer and warning that she could make the clerk's life very difficult. Just then, I had a hunch. I knew my mother's organizational skills were terrible. I asked if I could take one more look in her purse. She reluctantly agreed, insisting I wouldn't find anything as she had already looked everywhere. I opened her wallet and started checking the different compartments, and there, tucked behind her driver's license, was a Sam's Club membership card. I held it up, asking if this was what she was looking for. The entire customer service area went silent. My mother's face turned red. She demanded to know where I found it, accusing me of planting it there. I calmly explained that it was behind her ID, right where she always kept it. The clerk and the other customers were staring at us, and then the clerk asked if there was anything else they could help with. My mother snatched the card from my hand and stormed out of the store without another word. I turned to the clerk and the other customers, apologizing for the scene and offering for them to go ahead of me in line, as I didn't need anything anymore. I then saw my mother sitting in her car, gripping the steering wheel and staring straight ahead. I walked past her car without a word and headed home. Some things never change, but at least now, I didn't have to be a part of it anymore. That day at Sam's Club was the last time I saw my mother, and honestly, I'm okay with that. I'm a university student, and I've been looking forward to this big music festival in the city for months. It's this annual event that brings in artists from all over, and it's always a blast. I've been saving up from my part-time job at the campus bookstore just to afford the tickets. Now I live in the suburbs, and driving into the city is always a nightmare, especially during events like this. Parking's impossible to find, and when you do, it costs an arm and a leg. So I decided to take the train with my sister and her boyfriend. It seemed like the smart choice, you know? We got to the station early, hoping to beat the rush. The train was pretty packed when it arrived, but we managed to squeeze in. My sister and her boyfriend found seats, but I ended up standing near the door. That's when I first noticed this group a few seats away. There was this woman with 2 kids and a guy, probably her husband. They were being super loud, yelling at each other, even though they were sitting right next to each other. It was annoying, but I figured we'd be off soon enough, so I tried to ignore it. As we got closer to the city, more people got on, and it started getting really cramped. That's when things went south. One of the kids from that loud group started running around, bumping into people, and causing a ruckus. I saw him run towards this young woman holding a coffee. She had a little kid with her too. The boy crashed into her legs, and she spilled her coffee all over the floor. The woman quickly pulled the kid away from the hot liquid and gently scolded him, warning him about the dangers of his actions. She wasn't even that harsh, just trying to keep the kid safe. Then this woman, who I'm just gonna call Karen, stands up and starts screaming at the top of her lungs. Karen started yelling at the woman, accusing her of mistreating her son and denying that he had done anything wrong. The poor woman tried to explain, but Karen wasn't having it. She got right in her face and started spewing the most disgusting racial slurs I've ever heard. It was shocking. People around us were gasping and muttering, but no one seemed to know what to do. Karen then went on a racist tirade, suggesting that the woman and her people shouldn't be there and making a horrific reference to what settlers should have done. The woman was trying to shield her kid from Karen's tirade, looking scared and upset. That's when this other passenger stepped in. She was this big, tough-looking lady, and she'd clearly had enough. The hero lady demanded that Karen back off and questioned what was wrong with her. Karen retaliated by insulting the hero lady's appearance and telling her to mind her own business. The hero lady then turned to the victim, apologizing for Karen's racist behavior and checking if she was okay. Karen tried to shove the hero lady, but she barely budged. Then, out of nowhere, Karen starts swinging her fists around like a drunk windmill. The hero lady dodged easily and then, bam, landed one solid punch right on Karen's face. Karen's kids started screaming, and it looked like all hell was about to break loose. The hero's boyfriend came running down the aisle and managed to pull her away just as we were pulling into the next station. But Karen wasn't done. She came stumbling down the aisle, yelling and swinging at anyone in reach. People were jumping out of their seats to get away from her. Just as she reached our section, the doors opened, and a bunch of cops rushed in. Turns out someone had hit the emergency button and called for help. They took one look at the situation and immediately grabbed Karen, her husband, and the kids. As they were dragging them off the train, Karen was still yelling, claiming she was being assaulted and threatening to sue everyone. The rest of us had to stay behind to give statements. I heard later that Child Protective Services got involved because of how Karen and her husband had been acting. We missed the first act of the festival, but honestly, it was worth it to see that racist Karen get what was coming to her. The woman she'd attacked got some support from the other passengers, and I even saw some people offering to buy her a new coffee. It was a wild ride, literally and figuratively. Who knew public transport can be more exciting than the event you're heading to? I've lived in my neighborhood for years, minding my own business and trying to be a good neighbor. But there's this couple across the street who are just impossible to deal with. They act all friendly to your face, but the moment you turn your back, they're ready to cause trouble. I've caught them gossiping about other neighbors, complaining about trivial things, and generally being a nuisance. I tried to give them the benefit of the doubt at first, but after a few incidents, I realized they were just bad news. Anyway, my son was turning 10, and I wanted to throw him an awesome birthday party. It was the middle of summer, perfect weather for a backyard barbecue. I invited his school friends, their parents, and some of our family friends. To make it extra special, I asked my buddy who's a musician to come and play some tunes. Nothing crazy, just him with his guitar and a small amp. The party was in full swing, kids running around having a blast, adults chatting and enjoying the food. Everything was going great until about 8:30 in the evening. I noticed the nightmare neighbors pulling into their driveway. Within minutes, I spotted the wife through their front window, phone in hand. I turned to my friend and made a bet that the cops would show up within 10 minutes. Sure enough, right on cue, a police cruiser rolled up and parked in front of my house. Now, I'd had a few beers by this point, so I was feeling pretty bold. I strolled up to the officers and asked if there was a problem. One of them explained that they had received a noise complaint. I inquired about the time when the noise ordinance goes into effect. The officer informed me it was 10 o'clock. I checked my watch. It was only 9 p.m. I thanked the officers and walked back into my yard with a grin on my face. That's when I had an idea. I gathered all the kids together and went over to my musician friend. Turns out, he had brought a whole bunch of instruments. Maracas, cymbals, tambourines, you name it. I handed out an instrument to each kid and encouraged them to make as much noise as possible for the next hour. They went wild, banging on drums, shaking maracas, and creating the most beautiful cacophony you've ever heard. I swear I saw the police officers trying not to laugh. At 10 o'clock sharp, we shut it all down. The party wound down shortly after, and everyone went home happy. Well, almost everyone. I'm sure our lovely neighbors were fuming. But the story doesn't end there. A couple of weeks later, I was at the post office picking up my mail. In our town, we don't have mail delivery to houses, so everyone has a post office box. As I was leaving, I saw the wife from across the street come in to get her mail. I noticed her P.O. box number. An idea started forming in my head. I headed over to the local convenience store where a friend of mine works. I asked if I could take some subscription cards from the magazines they had. He agreed, so I grabbed cards from every embarrassing magazine I could find. We're talking the really juicy tabloids, some questionable men's magazines. You get the picture. I took those cards home and with the biggest smile on my face, I filled them all out with the husband's name and their P.O. box number. Then I dropped them in the mailbox, imagining the look on their faces when those magazines started arriving. Then I decided to take it up a notch. I signed them up for every free sample and promotional mailing list I could find online. Diapers, adult diapers, hair loss treatments, weight loss programs. I signed them up for it. For the next few months, their mailbox was stuffed with the most random and embarrassing things. I'd see them at the post office, red-faced and trying to hide their mail from prying eyes. They never could prove it was me, but I think they had their suspicions. They stopped making noise complaints after that. I might have gone a bit overboard, but the peace and quiet in the neighborhood since then has been absolutely wonderful.